Right, good afternoon everybody. This is Isolate, then Integrate, introducing your students to pronunciation. You can relax and sit back because almost everything you need is in your handout. I'm all in favour, really, of integrating pronunciation with language teaching. But I do think also it sometimes can be useful to focus on one item before integrating that item into the general teaching of language. And I call this Let's Get Started, or Getting Started with Pronunciation. Why is it difficult? Why is there a question about getting started with pronunciation? And I think one thing is that sometimes there is learner resistance to pronunciation because they've done a lot of it before. And a lot of it before sometimes has been associated with failure. Sometimes, of course, then, on the other hand, they've done it and they've achieved something. And that's fine, of course, if they've achieved it. But sometimes they only think they've achieved things, and sometimes they're not always right that they've achieved things. So, to overcome this, I feel we need to get started in some way, to get students on side. And I try and focus on activities which are clearly and obviously doable. So that's one criterion of our activities, and also which clearly and obviously will provide some improvement after the 30 or 40 minutes of your initial lesson. All right, let's get started then, and where shall we start? Why not start with the easiest thing we can, which is syllable stress. Syllable stress. Students can do it, but they don't do it enough, and they can all get better at it. How many syllables are in these words? Look and listen. Interesting, different, chocolate, vegetable, advantageous. You know these, and you know there's a little trick here that generally students think there are more syllables in these words than they really are. I just ask them to look and listen, count the syllables, and say them back. Then we'll go a bit further, and we'll move on from counting syllables to counting syllables and identifying the stress. Give them a blank table like that. I don't put the words in. And ask students to listen and fill in the chart. Listen, underline the stress in the word, and write down again, because we'll keep revising this, how many syllables are in the words. Secretary, biology, favourite, imagination, different, environment, etc. There are more words on your handout. There are about 15 words on your handout, which I use in this kind of exercise. Then we get feedback from this exercise from the students, see how they've done, how many syllables do they say, and where do they say the stress is? Can they say the word with the stress? Can they give it enough energy? This is what students don't usually do with syllable stress, is give the stresses enough energy and give less energy on the unstressed parts. All right, let's move on now and do a questionnaire. Which is more or and why? We give them some words. And we ask them to use the words, the three given words, and fit them in the question. Very simple. The three words, of course, are words that we have that have cropped up in the previous two exercises, and they're on the sheet, they're on your handout. In this case, biology, interesting, psychology. Students put the words in the question and make the question. While they're doing that, of course, they're thinking and in their minds are going through these words with the correct stress in them, we hope, and we've helped them there and underlined the stress, and they write them in the question. All right, so they make the right question, the teacher checks that they're doing it right, they go into pairs and ask their neighbours and answer their neighbours' questions, and they do it cross-class. Cross-class to demonstrate how good they are at it. And you can see there are 6 questions there in your handout, like this for students to practice. All right, next, students make their own questions. You've got about 15 words in the lists that you've done in the first 2 exercises. Students can choose 3 and use 3 from the list. Make a question like the one they've just used. So it's their own question. They ask their neighbour, stress the words correctly in pairs, and then demonstrate across the class what they can do. What have we done when we've done all this? The students have shown that they're able to count syllables. They've identified the stress, the syllable stress in words. They've placed the stress correctly, and they've got a little mnemonic to take away. If you remember that question that they asked there, that you asked them to ask, using 3 of the words that had been practiced, that's something they've created. So they've got a little mnemonic to remind them what they've been doing is syllable stress. And so they can keep that, they'll keep their mnemonic, they'll be aware that they've done syllable stress, and you can integrate that later on in your teaching. Right, now we've dipped our toe in the waters of syllable stress, we can move on to getting started with sentence stress, sometimes called nuclear stress. Let's listen. Say something. Say something in English. Where's the nuclear stress on each of those 2 sentences? I don't use the word nuclear stress or the phrase nuclear stress with my students. I just ask them, where's the big stress in that sentence? Say something. Say something. Say something. Say something in English. I ask them to put a box on the biggest stress in the sentence. They get the hang of it. They seem always to get the hang of it. They don't put stresses on the little words or something like that. They do that. So there we are. There's say something. What about the stress on say something in English? There they are. They can put the box on there. They can get it right or get it wrong, but you can tell them what the right thing is. All right. Now, if we're going to do sentence stress, or get started with sentence stress, we need a dialogue. And for a dialogue, we'll start off with a Gucci bag, and a girl and boy who are shopping in Liverpool. And the question is the bag. Let's look at the dialogue. I'll give you a minute to have a look at the dialogue. All right. I'm going to ask the students here to listen to the dialogue and put the box, there's a box up there, yes, see the box up there on the right? Put the box in the right place on the sentences. So they listen and they put the box on the right place. Let's have a go. Will you buy that handbag for me? Buy it for you? I'd buy it for your mother. It's a vintage bag. It's the latest fashion. I'll buy it for you for your birthday. I want it now. The boy will reply, and the girl will reply. All right, so the students have a go at putting the nuclear stress on the sentences. They can listen again and again, and that's fine. Have a few goes. We can repeat it again for them to help them, and then we'll give them the answers. Will you buy that handbag for me? Well, there's the answer, and they can practice it. But we can also give them the reason why it's the answer. Handbag is the last content word in that sentence. That's right. Content word, prepositions don't count as content words in this context, and pronouns don't count as content words either. So the last content word is handbag. Let's move on there. Buy it for you, I'd buy it for your mother. Now, why have we got a sentence stress on you there and on mother? We could guess one of those from the line before, but let's have a look here. Aha! It's a contrast. You, of course, as you know, is contrasted with mother. Aha. You and mother. Buy it for you, I'd buy it for your mother. Buy it for your mother, buy it for you. Contrast on you and contrast on mother. Mother also, of course, happens to be the last content word, so that's a second reason why that would be the stressed syllable there. It's a vintage bag. It's the latest fashion. What's happening here? What is happening here? Where's the last content word in here? You might think it's bag. You would be right if that's the last, if you're looking for the last content word. But we don't stress bag. We stress vintage. Because, of course, we've got bag up here, and we know we're talking about the bag, and we've got bag again, so we don't stress it. We avoid stressing repeated words. and it's a vintage bag for that reason. It's the latest fashion. Well, that's quite simple. It's the last content word. Here we have, I'll buy it for you, for your birthday. All right, now why are we stressing buy? It's the last content word, because the pronoun doesn't count and the preposition doesn't count. Oh, here we are. Pronoun doesn't count, preposition doesn't count, and the other pronoun doesn't count as a content word in this context. So by is the last content word. And I've tucked in there, just to provide a little bit of practice for the students, this tricky bit when the nucleus has got a little tail of 3 unstressed words after it, which students find a bit tricky. So, and for your birthday is the last content word. All right, I want it now, says the girl. And that again is the last content word. All right, so now the students know the dialogue, they know and they can produce the correct sentence stress, and they know why it's all correct. So we can then practice it with a partner, obviously. You can add an extra couple of lines there where the boys and the girls part of the dialogue were missing. If you remember, the girl said, I want it now, but there was a space there for the boy to make his reply. You've got the dialogue, by the way, on your handout as well. So they can add a couple of lines there, and then they can practice the extended dialogue, that is extended by the 2 lines, in pairs. And they can practice across class to demonstrate how well they got it. What do we get when we've done all that? They can place the nuclear stress in a sentence. They've got a mnemonic again. This dialogue here encapsulates 3 of the most important ways in which sentence stress varies. They've practiced it, and part of the mnemonic they've written themselves to try to personalise it. And so I think after that activity they'll know what sentence stress is. They'll be able to keep the mnemonic dialogue, of course. They'll be able to refer to it, and the teacher will be able to refer to it in subsequent lessons when you want to integrate it into your teaching. Let's move on to sounds. We've got learner resistance again on sounds. Similar to resistance we get in general, but some sounds are very difficult for learners from some backgrounds. It cannot be denied. L and R are difficult for Japanese students. And the students have either struggled with these for years and failed, or possibly they've learnt it when they were 5 and they can do it. In either case, of course, these chestnuts you'll find the students don't want to do, for reasonably good reasons there. Those are the chestnuts, but what about, then there's the rest. Students often feel they can pronounce English okay, in an okay manner. And there are just a few difficult things they can't do, and everything else is all right. And I think this is not really the right way to categorise student problems, because this business here, the rest, is made up of 2 groups. The rest is what they really can do. Clearly, most students can pronounce most of the vowels and diphthongs and phonemes and consonants of a language reasonably well. I don't know, I'd hazard a guess. 50%, 60%, they're not much trouble. There are the chestnuts then, we've referred to at the start, but then there are others. There's this middle range where students can pronounce them, but in fact they don't. They can discriminate orally, but they don't. They can produce them adequately in isolated, concentrated examples, but not well enough and not reliably enough in the stream of speech. This is the middle range, really, where we find the concept of what I call the fuzzy phoneme. Let's take Spanish students, for example, or students who speak Spanish as their first language. You know what B's and V's, B and V. Spanish students can pronounce B. They've got B in their language. They can pronounce V too. They may have V in their language, but when they speak English, what do we get? We get in the stream of speech something that's not quite b and it's not quite v. We get something in the middle here. It's in this edge area here, if I can call it an edge area. It's not a clearly distinct b and it's not a clearly distinct v. And that's what I mean by the fuzzy phoneme. Here, it's fuzzy around the edges, if you like. People will be familiar, I imagine, with this chart. I just wanted to highlight the f here. Japanese learners can all do f. Japanese learners can all do w. And you can do minimal pairs, you're blue in the face, and they get them all right. And you'll think this is fantastic, until you listen to the stream of speech. And then you will find that very often, when it gets a bit tricky, or when students get a bit tired also, you don't get f, you get instead. Something between that f and that w is replaced. Now, you could take the view, of course, that one or two sounds like this in a learner's repertoire might be unproblematic. But in my experience, it's not one or two sounds. There are many vowels and many consonants where students have this kind of problem, where they're all fuzzy or indistinct, that they're not clearly English sounds at all. And it's what I call the miasma of uncertainty that can descend upon long streams of speech, which comes across to the listener. Now, what can we do about it? Well, it's not very difficult. It's not very difficult. We can diagnose the problem. You can give them a test. If you like, I've put in your handout 2 references to tests which you can use to test your students. Listen and diagnose what their problems in the sounds area might be. You may not need to do a test. If you have Chinese students in your class, you know already that Chinese students can pronounce the n phoneme perfectly well. But what they can't do is pronounce it reliably and well enough in the stream of speech. Sometimes it will disappear entirely, and sometimes it will become this kind of fuzzy sound that is not n and it's not n. So you know what, these are 2 ways of finding out what the sounds are, really, that you need to concentrate on, and teach them the sounds. They're not difficult, they can do them already. So what do they need? They need to create their own practice sentences. The teacher should give them 3 words. A Spanish student who's having trouble with that v phoneme, let's say we give the student very, invent, have. Or the Chinese student, we give them never, cinema, phone. And we ask them to write a sentence. Write a sentence which links all these 3 words. Well, that's quite straightforward. And where do these words come from? They come from the teacher's imagination. Or, if you prefer, I've tried to make things easy for you, and I've created a word table, and I've put it on your handout. And you don't have to depend on your imagination quite so much here. If your student, for example, has problems with the p phoneme, give him 3 from this word table here. Present is p in initial position. Open is p in medial position. Help is p in final position. I've done that throughout the table. Initial, medial, and final. The 4th word is just p twice. Just for fun, really. P twice in the word. So you've got a selection of words there in the table where the phonemes are distributed in the words in that way. Secondly, I've concentrated on nouns, verbs, and adverbs to make it easy for the students to make a sentence with them in. All right. Thirdly, they're all the words on the table, as many as I can, the words on the table are high in the frequency list. And again, as many as I can of the words on the table have concrete, wide meanings, to make it easy for the students to make sentences with words with these phonemes in them. So, the teacher selects 3 words which exemplify the sound to be practiced. The students use the words in a sentence. They practice in pairs. They demonstrate what they can do across class. And if you've got a multinational class, you can spend a minute or 2 having an insightful discussion on why students don't all have the same sentences and why different students have different sentences. It's amazing. Students don't realise how other students from other L1 backgrounds have different problems from them. All right, what have we got here if we do this? I hope students will clarify the fuzzy phonemes. They'll practice them anyway, and if you're listening and correcting, they will do it. They've got a mnemonic. Every student's got their own sentence now with their own problem sound in, to keep with them. And they've got their own sounds to work on, which they can work on in their own time. This is getting started. There's more to do on this, of course. You haven't done it just because they've got a sentence and a mnemonic. There's more to do, but this is getting started. All right, let's have a look at intonation. Many of you will be familiar with Adrian Underhill's Sound Foundations chart. If you look on the top right-hand corner of the Sound Foundations chart, you will find these little things here. The word intonation is not on top, but you'll find 3 arrows. And this tells you what you need to know about intonation, that tunes are up, or tunes are down, or tunes are level. Intonation is about discrimination. It's about making distinctions between things, like a lot of pronunciation, really. Let's have a look at what we can do with distinguishing between tunes. 3-4-7. 3-4-7. 3-4-7. Are those the same or different? Let's try again. 3-4-7. 3-4-7. Oh, that's a bit better. Are they the same or different? And if they're different, how are they different? And what name do we use for this difference? 3-4-7 is down up. 3-4-7 is down. It's that arrow going down. So we've got a difference here. What happens when we move on here to 3-4-7, 3-2-1? What's happening here? Have we got 2 different tunes, or have we got 1 tune? What's happening? 3-4-7, 3-2-1. There's a rule here. One may prefer to call it a pattern. A pattern, of course, which you know, and the students will be most interested in to know, that when we're finished, we use a down, a falling intonation. But when we're not finished, we use a down-up intonation. So we have this number here, 3-4-7, 3-2-1. All right, we can do lots of practice with this. Very simple. We can use numbers, sequences of numbers. Any old sequence will do. 8-7-9, 4-4-6. Is that finished or unfinished? I'll try again. 8-7-9, 4-4-6. What about the next one? 7-6-5, 2-2-1. Is that second one finished or unfinished? What about the first one? Was that finished or unfinished? And so on. Driving license references, surnames, and of course shopping lists. Apples, carrots, pears. Are those just examples of the list, or is that the whole list? What about this? Apples, carrots, pears. Is that the whole list, or is that just a few examples from the list? Okay. The point of this, I should add, is for students to become attuned to one basic typical distinction that English makes between the 2 tones, the down-up and the down tone. That's the point of it. It's ear training, really. Let's move on and do a quiz. Why not? A general knowledge quiz. Which of these is not a mammal? How many? 5. Which of these is not a mammal? A whale? A shark? Sorry. A whale, B, a shark, C, a dolphin. A whale, B, a shark, C, a dolphin. We can further practice the intonation tunes that we've done before. A whale is the down up. B, a shark, C, a dolphin. Down up, down up, down. Students can practice that, and in your handout you have this question and 2 more questions which students can practice with each other. They can go into pairs, and then they can demonstrate across class their skill in using these basic intonation patterns. And then we're going to ask them to make some general knowledge questions themselves. Make 3 general knowledge questions yourselves. All right. Let's make it easy and give them the topics. Otherwise, they may take too long. Animals, flags, buildings, mountains, movies, songs and singers, books and writers, sports and sportsmen. Make it easy for them to make 3 questions, 3 general knowledge quiz questions with multiple choice answers. What do we get from this if we do all this? I'd say we get that students can distinguish and produce 2 tunes, the down and up pattern and the down pattern. They've got a mnemonic. Remember, they've created 3 general knowledge quiz questions for themselves, of their own, and practiced it. So they've got a mnemonic that they can refer to. And lastly, they know what intonation is. They've done it. It's on the menu of your class, of your course, and you can refer to it later when you integrate it. That's getting started with pronunciation. I believe that all the activities I've shown you are doable by the students. I believe that they can show after half an hour or 40 minutes, which is what these exercises will take when you do them at a reasonable pace, unlike the pace I've just gone through them now. The students will show improvement at the end. And they've created their own practice materials and their own mnemonics to help them remember what they've done and what it is. That's why I suggest that you isolate and then integrate. Now it's time for questions. Okay, thank you. If we have a question. Thank you. You're a brave man, coming in at this moment of danger.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I must say that I have my hardest time teaching pronunciation to my students. For the main reason that sometimes they come across words and I cannot give them any rule concerning the pronunciation of such rules. And I find it quite frustrating as a teacher. All the time I go through words and I know how to pronounce them, but what they ask me, what is the rationale between pronouncing this word, this, and you have an O instead of, and this is really frustrating for the teacher not to be able, for myself, I don't know other people, but really there are some words, and even the way it is written, you think the pronunciation is this way, but people pronounce it quite different.
Yes, the question is asking about the difficulty of pronunciation when the words are all pronounced without any rationale. Yes, without any rationale, without rhyme or reason. That's right. It's an irregular language. English is an irregularly pronounced language. French is also, of course.
Yeah.
We're not the only one, so there are other malefactors to be drawn into the net. But there's nothing one can do about it, really. A table is called a table because it's called a table. And unfortunately, I don't know, secretary is pronounced with that number of syllables because it's pronounced with that number of syllables. I think they have to learn it as they meet it. Yes?
Sorry, could I actually add to that sometimes I find it helpful to say to my students that as a native speaker, I don't know how to pronounce a word when I first see it written on the page. So even for us, it's the same. Unless I've heard someone else saying a word, if I just read a new word, I don't know how to pronounce it. So it does kind of, in some way, help to explain that it is, the irregularity.
So we're all in the same boat. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Particularly place names, of course. Yes. Place names are a particular problem in England. We don't know how to pronounce place names. That's right. Very, very often. Okay. Any more questions? Yes, I've got a question here. Yes. Back.
I found it rather helpful at times, just to explain to my students, that the English study is historical. And I did that. I read out Chaucer text to them and said, you see, that is phonetic, and the language moved on and spelled still in the old way. And, all right, and once they got the hang of it and understood it, it's at least, that's an understanding for the difficulties.
Yes. Okay.
Just by way of explanation.
Yes, no, I think that's very valuable. It may be very valuable indeed to explain to students the rationale behind how our spelling and pronunciation got so divorced With some students, I'm sure it may be. I've just had the lady outside, the dragon, come and tell me the session is now over. Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed watching this video. You can watch more videos on www.emw-edu.com. Don't forget like and share. Bye.